The trick in seduction, of male or female seduction, is when you're not there, the other person is thinking about you. That is when you've succeeded. That is the game that you're trying to play. Because when you're there, they're seeing you and things are going on, they're thinking about you. But when you're absent and they're thinking about you, then you've gotten under their skin. If you're not there and they're not thinking about you, then your seduction isn't working, right? So the whole point is to create a fantasy in which they're going, One of the things I talk about is creating mixed signals. Like, people seem to be good, but they also show a little bit of an evil sign. And so the woman is thinking, who is this man? Do I really know him? What is he really about? I'm intrigued. And he's sort of touched on certain fantasy and points, and her imagination now takes over. She starts thinking about him. She starts imagining him as if he could be playing one of these great archetypes of the male seducer, right? He could be the rescuer. He could be the hero. And so because she has an imagination, a vivid imagination, she's enveloping him in all of these fantasies from her point of view. And so if the male seducer knows how to feed a little bit her imagination so that when he's not there, she starts enveloping him in this. There's the great writer Stendhal, the French writer who wrote a book on love. He compared it to these limbs of trees that have been dropped into this mine, this crystal mine in Germany. And when they pull them out, they're full of crystals. And he calls falling in love this crystallization method, where in your mind, crystals are forming, where you're imagining this person is fantastic and has all these fantasy elements. Well, if the woman has no imagination, is so matter of fact and so businesslike, you could do all of the tactics in the art of seduction, and she won't be thinking about you. She won't be enveloping you in these fantasies.
What's interesting then in that imagination, I wonder if it's even worse in today's society, because you've got social media. People look online before they go on a date and they see photos of somebody, and then they have this whole imagination of what that person looks like. If that person then that's got this wild imagination where they see, let's say, a guy with a dog, and they're like, oh my God, he loves dogs. We're going to come together. We're going to have this dog family. Like, he's my person. And that whole idea of the imagination before you've even gone on the date is even more dangerous now.
Probably. You're talking to somebody a little bit older. I mean, a lot older. But so I'm back in the day where I had to go to a bar, or I had to go, actually had the cojones to go pick up a woman, right? I didn't have all this crap. So yeah, if you're a male seducer, you know how to create that fantasy by having a picture of holding a little cat. Oh, he's so sensitive and wonderful, or a dog, and creating this kind of image that's going to feed women's imagination. She's hooked. He's got the little hook in her. You can take her wherever he wants. So using that and being very clever with how you present yourself with the image and the words that go with it, you can feed that imagination factor.
Yeah. Okay, so what I've done is I've actually pulled out, so you have a seduction process in your book, and I've pulled out some of the ones that I just find utterly fascinating that I would love to really talk about.
Right.
So number 2, actually, I only got to number 2.
You've got 24 to go.
Yeah, I know. Well, I was going to go through all of them, Robert, and I was like, if only I could keep you here for multiple hours, I would, because I adore you so much. But what we've done is I've just pulled out like the ones that I think my audience would really find powerful. So you got number 2, which is create a false sense of security.
So when a man's trying to seduce a woman, there's a wariness. Women have much more to lose in a seduction than the man, right? Men, they'll sleep with anybody practically, right? We all know that. A woman has much more to lose in that process. So women are wary, right? And so you have to overcome their wariness. You have to create some trust. And if you're an honest seducer, you're creating honest trust. But if you're a dishonest seducer, you're creating a false sense of trust. And one of the strategies that I talk about is you become their friend. And when you're their friend, and this is a longer seduction, it'll take several months because you can't do it in a couple of days. When you become their friend, you don't seem so threatening. The trust element comes into play, right? You see them as someone who genuinely likes, for a man who wants to be their friend. Well, on one hand, it might be insulting that he doesn't see me as attractive. But on the other hand, he wants to be my friend, and it's very kind of flattering. Well, you get that friendship going, and then you inject something else. You start bringing in some of that sexual element, some of that erotic element. And the trust element that has been established makes it very difficult for she becomes very confused. And because she's been emotionally connected as a friend, it's like a bridge to creating a connection sexually. So starting off by lowering their wariness of you, their suspicion, by trying to be their friend means, oh, he's not just interested in sex, but he might be just interested in sex, but he's using this tactic to kind of lower your suspicions about him.
I hate to say that it's genius, but it's actually genius. As a woman, as you're talking, I'm literally thinking to myself, yeah, you would trust them. Because in all honesty, Robert, if I went out, let's say I wasn't married, and I went out with a guy, and I was like, I'm not sure if it's a day, it's a group of us. As a woman, you absolutely have one eye open the whole time. You're like, is he going to make a move? Like, you're just aware of that constantly. If he doesn't then make a move, a week later, 2 weeks later, and he's genuinely asking me about my family.
Yeah.
Like, I actually completely understand why, as a woman, you were like, wow, he actually likes me.
Yeah.
Me for me, not me as potential object, not me as a one-night stand.
Right.
And then that does allow you to lower your guard.
Yeah. The way to see through that tactic is this attempted friendship genuine or not? And that's a tricky question, right? But that opens up the whole thing about being much more sensitive to the nonverbal cues that you pick up from a person. Because what often happens with women is that they sense something is wrong with the man from the first time they meet him. But then they drop the suspicion very quickly. They think, oh, he's not so bad, or I had it all wrong. But actually that first instinct was very right. So you have to trust your instincts, and you have to trust that this person that is trying to become your friend, they're giving off signs that there's something kind of cold about it. It doesn't feel genuine, right? It feels like a tactic. And we can get into that later because
I would love to, actually, if you don't mind just giving us a few now.
So one thing that a man will do if he's using this kind of tactic is he's in a bit of a hurry, right? Because, Jesus Christ, I don't have 6 months to become friends with this woman. I want to sleep with her tomorrow, right? So he's in a bit of a hurry. So his effort to be a friend is kind of rushed. He really likes you, right? But he's texting you, he's talking about you, asking you questions and all these other things. But it's all it seems kind of rushed. In a period of like a week or so, he's suddenly your friend now. That is a sure sign that something else is going on. Because if you genuinely want to be a friend of someone, you're willing to take your time, right? So the calculating seducer is probably after sex fairly quickly, right? Or an abusive relationship. So they're not willing to take their time in that area. But also, as I said, people who are narcissists, and that's a pretty broad category, but a big category of the cold male seducer, you can kind of pick up the signs in them. So they're asking you questions, but they don't seem genuinely interested. There's a kind of coldness in their eyes. I say the classic nonverbal cue of a narcissist is there's a disconnect between their eyes and their mouth. So they smile. Oh, yes, that's so interesting, Lisa. Yeah. But the eyes are dead. Their eyes are not. When someone's genuinely interested, the whole face lights up. You can't fake that. But what you can fake is a kind of a smile, but the eyes reveal. So there are signs that the narcissist isn't really emotionally involved. But the problem with a lot of women in this situation is they're not attentive. They're thinking about themselves. They're projecting onto the man images from their childhood, their father figures, previous men who've hurt them. They're not in the moment. They're not reading the fine-grained, nonverbal cues that the other person is getting. They're thinking about their problems, their history, their fantasies. But you have to focus. You have to be in the moment. You have to look at them and see if that interest that they're showing to be your friend is actually genuine or not. And the face will often reveal that.
Ah, that's so good. One thing I'd like to add, as a woman though, also, as an adult woman, I feel like I have neglected and ignored my gut intuition.
Sure.
And so I think a big part of it is we have the gut intuition. We've been told our whole lives, or we feel like we've ignored it. We've told not to trust it. And so now I think it actually is useful to start to learn and trust your gut intuition again, so that when that sort of thing happens, you don't go, well, it must be I must be crazy, just believe what they say. You actually listen to it and you're like, what is it that my body or my mind is trying to tell me? And if it's, I don't trust this person, then the next question is why? And I love you being able to give that tactic of look at their eyes and look at their mouth. And if there feels like there's something out of alignment, notice it and trust it. I think that's really powerful.
Well, you know, in the past, before the internet, before when people were more social, and women were a little bit warier than they are now about men, right? Because becoming pregnant outside of marriage was a huge deal. They had that instinct, and it was very, very strong. A woman could pick up the signals of a cold seducer pretty quickly, but that skill has been degraded in the modern era, right? And so when you're spending so much of your time on your phone and you're judging people, they're the virtual thing, you're losing the sense of how to look at somebody in the moment. And it's not just this thing I told you about the eyes. Some of it I can't even communicate in words. It's that gut feeling that something isn't right about this person. Something is disconnected. I can't say exactly what it is, but it's giving me a feeling that he is not who he pretends to be. There's a fine line between that and paranoia, where you're doing that to every man. Because if you become like that, then you can never have a good relationship. You can never let down your guard. So that you can go too far with that. But you should have, in the initial stages of a relationship, a woman should have a little bit of suspicion, a little bit of wariness that has to come down. He has to earn your trust. He can't just be this instant thing that happens.
Oh God, I love the earning, the trusting. I think that's super important versus just give your trust over. One thing I started to do was really start to learn my own intuition and almost train it and think of it like a skill set, because I've been ignoring it for so long and it keeps showing up, and it's like, I need to start listening to it. So instead of just taking it for fact, what I started to do is every time I had the gut intuition, I would write it down.
Can you give me an example of some?
Yes. Somebody gave me some signals where I'm like, I don't know if I can trust that person. There's something, and I don't know what, because on paper, if it was a script, it would read very normal. People would be like, there's nothing wrong. But there were certain things that they said that made me think they weren't trustworthy and that they were a flake. I had zero proof, and every time I tried to articulate it, I was like, I think I'm just imagining it, but it feels real. And within a month, of course, it completely played out the way that my gut had anticipated, and they were proven to not be trustworthy. Yeah. So that allowed me to encourage myself to listen to nonverbal cues more.
That's right. It's very important. Yeah.
All right, I want to go on to the next one now.
We're on number 3.
So number 3, it is number 3.
Oh, okay.
I was like, I gotta reduce it. They're just so good, Robert. Okay. They're so good. You mentioned this earlier, but you said mixed signals. So talk to me about mixed signals.
Well, it's a very powerful seduction technique. It preys on a very elemental part of human psychology. It's something that I don't think people are so good at anymore. But the example I give in the book is of this woman who was a fantastic seductress in the beginning of the 19th century. I believe it's Madame Recamier. She was so angelic. She was just so pure and so chaste. She played the harp. You know what? That's the instrument that angels play, right? There would be salons where she would be playing the harp and there would be other musicians there. And she was very beautiful, and the men would like going crazy about her. But then what she would do is she'd be playing the harp, and then she would shoot this man a look that said something else, something a little bit sexual, something a little bit naughty. But then it was gone and she was playing the harp again. And he'd be going, what the hell was that? Did I just pick up like some kind of interest in me that was physical? But then she went back. She's so angelic. She's so unlike that, right? What is it? Well, that triggers the fantasy element, right? The person is a puzzle. And the problem today, and people are so obvious. They're so goddamn obvious. They're on the internet. They're saying, here's what I have for breakfast. Here's what I love. You know, I'm just opening myself up and this is who I am, right? But seduction involves a little bit of mystery, a little bit of fantasy. It's not like everyday life. It's not like things on Instagram. It's something different. It's theater. That's what's exciting about it, okay? So if you're the male seducer, he will be someone who seems very trustworthy, very honest, very solid. He got an MBA. He's working for Goldman Sachs. But then he reveals something a little bit rock and roll, a little bit rebellious, a little bit like he takes something else about him that doesn't quite click. Wow, I didn't know who this guy is. Maybe he's more interesting than I thought. Maybe he's not so buttoned up and so controlled as I thought. There's another aspect to him. The element of surprise that you don't know who someone is what fascinates us about a movie. When you create a character and suddenly on screen they reveal a trait that seems out of character. Wow, that's exciting. That's what makes you, that's how movies work, right? It's the same thing in real life. You create a sense of, you don't know who I am, but it has to be subtle. It's not like you're not Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. You're not half evil and half button-down banker. You're 95% banker and you're 2 or 3 or 4% of this other thing. It's a little peak of something else that intrigues, that creates a fantasy element, okay? Now, how a woman could sense that that is a tactic, it comes back down to that nonverbal element. Or the other thing is analyze what it is that's intriguing you, what it is that's making you think about the person. So from the woman's point of view, the ability to stand back and analyze the situation instead of getting immediately rushing in emotionally is probably the best thing overall for the whole thing that we're talking about today.
Okay, so number 5. See, I ditched number 4. We got create a need. So you put stir anxiety and discontent.
Well, that's one of the more evil tactics. I don't deny that. I hate to say it because I'm not really into the whole, I'm certainly not into the pickup artist scene, right? And people have associated my book with that. Because I want my book to be something a little more elevated than that. But in the pickup artist world, they have the thing called negging, which is what negging, negative, where you tell the woman something negative about them. Well, that creates a kind of a wound in them that gives you now room to now your next step is sort of kind and interested in them, but they're feeling like they want to kind of satisfy what you were criticizing. So creating a wound, creating a need for you is what a classic seducer will do. So you're pinpointing a vulnerability that they have, something that's missing in their life, and you're going to be the one that provides it. So if you actually create the need in them by something you say, and then you're the one to satisfy it, it's a very, very potent seduction technique. Now, the thing that happened with the game and the pickup artist scene in Los Angeles is that so many men were using these tactics, were using that negging tactic, that the moment a woman heard that, she knew this guy's a pickup artist, and they weren't interested in it. So it stopped working after a while. But if you see a man doing that, if he's like kind of criticizing you in a subtle way, but then it's covered up by other things going on, maybe feel like that was a tactic, that wasn't genuine, that he was doing that to kind of make me feel insecure, because an insecure person is more vulnerable to being seduced than a totally secure person.
Yeah. The problem is when you're insecure, if they touch on your insecurity in that moment, I don't think you think they're trying to touch on my insecurity. You almost think, ouch, that really hurt. God, I knew I was bad at that. See, I told you so. And it almost reconfirms what you're thinking instead of highlights that they're trying to seduce you.
That's very true.
Coming up.
A seduction is you're taking somebody out of that world and you're taking them into something different, heightened, more dramatic, more interesting, more theatrical.
All right, guys, we're going to get right back to the conversation with the amazing Robert Greene. But first, I want to talk directly to the badass content creators watching right freaking now. When you pour time and love and energy into the content that you're creating, just like I do, you know that creating short clips for social is actually important to help people come and watch your message and your show. But it also is actually freaking tedious and time consuming. So that's why I think you're going to freaking love Opus Clips. Now, Opus Clips makes it so damn simple to convert your long-form videos into short, social media ready clips automatically using AI. We use Opus Clips right here on Women of Impact and Impact Theory, and every single person absolutely loves how it works so damn well to be able to clip emotional and powerful moments from these episodes that you watch to then share on social. So trust me, my homie, just go and give Clip Anything by Opus Clip a try for yourself and see how easy it is to use. Now, you can actually go and try it for the next few weeks for absolutely free when you click the link in the show notes. Guys, that was absolutely free, so you have no fear of loss. Go check it out, and if you love it, use it, and if you don't use it. But I have a feeling you're gonna love it. All right, now back to the episode.
Which is why sometimes you have to be able to withdraw from your emotional responses and analyze what's going on. Now, I talk about this in all of my books. We're emotional animals. We're not rational creatures, despite what we might think. So in the moment, you're always going to be emotionally involved. You can be upset, but also you want to show the other person that they're wrong about the insecurity they created, which is a seduction technique. So in the moment, as you say, you're feeling that, and there's no way you're going to get over it. It's going to embroil you in a thought process that's going to make you even more insecure. What you need to do is the next day, you need to look back at what happened and think about it and analyze it when they're not in your presence and go, what really went on? So that would be a tactic I would really, really emphasize. On a first date particularly, the next day, mentally review what they did and what they said and think about whether it seemed like it was genuine or natural, or if there might have been some kind of manipulative game going on. And kind of analyze it a little bit, because it's hard to do that in the moment.
Do you find that it's harder to even do that when you're the closer you are to the person? So on the first day, I think it may be a little easier to disconnect yourself, to be like,
sure,
hang on a minute, that was a little rude. Versus if you're doing it, let's say to a parent or a sibling, where you're like, that was really offensive. Do you think it's harder? And then if so, are there any tactics that you have seen or used where it's like, even if you care about them and you love them, like if it was my husband or your wife, like how do we still look at that without emotion and still be able to identify that maybe it was a tactic?
Well, it's not always a tactic. I mean, I've known situations where a parent will make a comment about a woman's weight, a kind of a bitchy comment. And it's not like the person doing that has some kind of nefarious thing involved. They just don't know how to control their mouth. They're being passive aggressive in some way, right? And as you say, if it's like a parent or somebody you've been involved with for several years, it's much, much harder to take that distance. But it's very important. Now, I know people in my life who know how to trigger me like that and say something like that. And I do get upset, even though I've written all the books about not getting upset, because I can't bloody well help it, right? And then I might react and do something that I kind of regret, and then I analyze it, and then I go, what went on here in this situation, and I unspool it. Now, it's easy for me to say that because I've been doing this for years. It's why I write books. I understand that having a distance when a parent says a comment that's kind of biting or cruel, it's very hard to the next day to think about that and see. But in general, I try to promote this philosophy that what people do to you is not personal. Now, people have a very hard time with that, going, well, what do you mean it's not personal, Robert? Well, what I mean by that is when somebody says something malicious or cruel or bitchy, they're not really aiming it at you. They're having problems from their own past. They're aiming it at their parent. They're aiming it at a sibling. They're aiming it at a previous boyfriend or girlfriend. They're aiming it at a colleague that at work that did something to them. It really isn't personal about you in particular. It's about them and their problems. So if you take the angle that I'm not going